Good evening, YouTube. It's CN Maritime History here, back again with another video. And tonight I will be talking about the USS Arizona, which, if anyone knows anything about World War II, they've definitely heard of this. Or at least Pearl Harbor, in that sense. Which I will be covering in a broader sense soon, but at the moment we'll just be talking about the Arizona. So, I actually tried to put a picture up of the model I have of the Arizona, but technology issues, so I'll probably post it in the community tab. It's identical to it, besides the fact that the aft mast here is a little crooked, but that doesn't matter. So anyway, let's begin the video. Also, please subscribe and like. So, the USS Arizona was a battleship and was built for the United States Navy in the mid-1910s. She was named in honor of the 48th state and was the second and last ship in the Pennsylvania class. After she was commissioned in 1916, Arizona remained in the States during World War I, but escorted President Woodrow Wilson to the subsequent Paris Peace Conference after the war. The ship was deployed again abroad in 1919 to represent American interests during the Greco-Turkish War, and 2 years afterwards she was transferred to the Pacific Fleet, under which the ship would remain for the rest of her career. Now let's go into detail. The Pennsylvania-class ships were significantly larger than their predecessors, the Nevada-class. Arizona had an overall length of 608 feet, a beam of 97 feet at her waterline, and a draft of 29 feet 3 inches at deep load, meaning the heaviest load she could carry. This was 25 feet longer than the older ships in the Navy at that point in time. She displaced 29,158 long tons at standard and 31,917 long tons at deep load, over 4,000 long tons more than the older ships. Also, by the way, the Arizona was was quite old by the time of Pearl Harbor. It was not new whatsoever, considering it was built in the 1910s and Pearl Harbor happened in 1941. So it was modernized, but it was not new whatsoever. And the ship, which we explained last video about metacentric height, she had a metacentric height of 7.82 feet, meaning that was the... Remember how I had said in the last video, if you watched it, I believe I said, yeah, Costa Concordia, about the listing. If not, I'll just say it again if you haven't seen that. The metacentric height is a measurement of the initial static stability of a floating body. It is calculated as the distance between the center of gravity of a ship and its metacenter. So, it's pretty much a math formula. But it does have real-world applications, of course, as well, as it helps measure ballast and things like that. So, let's continue. Her crew numbered 56 officers and 1,031 enlisted men when she was built. However, this painting of the Arizona was actually not. It's not the. This is the 1941 configuration, as you can see clearly in the next picture here. It's not the older one that she was originally built as. They're very distinct differences in them. She had 4 direct-drive Parsons steam turbine sets, each of which drove a propeller 12 feet 1.5 inches in diameter, using steam provided by 12 boilers. The turbines were designed to produce a total of 34,000 shaft horsepower, or 25,000 kilowatts, but achieved only 33,376 shp during Arizona sea trials when she met her design speed of 21 knots, which is around 24 miles per hour. However, she did manage to reach 21.5 knots, or 24.7 miles per hour, during a full power trial in September of 1924. She was designed to carry enough fuel oil to steam at a speed of 12 knots for 8,000 nautical miles, or 9,200 standard miles, with a clean bottom, meaning like no barnacles or anything like that. She had 402 horsepower turbo generators. Arizona carried 12 45 caliber 14-inch guns in triple gun turrets, which you can see along the base here. However, not all of them are originals to the ship, as they were installed later. But in the case I'm reading from the script here, these would be the original guns. The turrets were numbered from 1 to 4 from front to rear. Oh, I'm very sorry. I phrased that wrong. when I originally read triple gun turrets, I assumed the guns down here. However, it of course refers to the actual gun turrets on the front and back of the ship. I apologize. The turrets were numbered from 1 to 4 from front to rear. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I do believe if you were an Arizona crew member, you could actually get your ashes interred in Barbette 4, which is actually the turret ring below the turret back here. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but because these two turrets are practically non-existent anymore, and Barbette 3 is, well, kind of destroyed. But I believe it's Barbette 4, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. Defense against torpedo boats is provided by 22 51 caliber 5-inch guns mounted in individual casemates to the sides of the ship's hull. That's what these are down here. Positioned as they were proved vulnerable to sea spray and could not be worked in heavy seas. The ship mounted 4 50 caliber 3-inch guns for anti-aircraft defense, although only 2 were fitted when completed. The other pair was added shortly afterwards on top of turret number 3, so this one right here. The other pair, yeah, okay. Sorry, I read over a line here. Arizona also mounted 2 21-inch torpedo tubes underwater, one on each broadside, and carried 24 torpedoes for them. The Pennsylvania-class design continued the all-or-nothing principle of armoring only the most important areas of the ship, begun in the Nevada-class. The waterline armor belt of Krupp armor measured 13.5 inches thick and covered only the ship's machinery spaces and magazines. It had a total height of 17 feet 6 inches, of which 8 feet was below the waterline. Beginning 2 feet 4 inches below the waterline, the belt tapered to its minimum thickness of 8 inches or 203 millimeters. The transverse bulkheads at each end of the ship ranged from 13 to 8 inches in thickness. The faces of the gun turrets were 18 inches thick, while the sides were 9 to 10 inches thick, and the turret roofs were protected by 5 inches of armor. The armor of the barbettes, which would of course be the actual below the turrets themselves down here, were 18 to 4.5 inches thick. The conning tower was protected by 16 inches of armor and had a roof 8 inches thick. So up here, if I remember my naval terminology right, I believe this is the conning tower up here. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. I have not looked at the deck plan of Arizona, so I do not know for sure. I'm more familiar with submarines when I talk about conning towers. But let's continue. The main armory deck was 3 plates thick with a total thickness of 3 inches. Over the steering gear, the armor increased to 6.25 inches and 2 plates. Beneath it was the splinter deck that ranged from 1.5 to 2 inches in thickness. The boiler uptakes are protected by a conical mainland that ranged from 9 to 15 inches in thickness. And a 3-inch torpedo bulkhead was placed 9 feet 6 inches inboard from the ship's side, and the ship was provided with a complete double bottom. Testing in mid-1914 revealed that this system could withstand 300 pounds of TNT. So, she was very, very heavy with armor. It may sound like it was light, but all that put together is extremely heavy, considering it could withstand 300 pounds of TNT, which is a lot. So the keel of battleship number 39, which is what BB 39 stands for if you look at the designation of the Arizona, was laid on the morning of March 16, 1914, with Assistant Secretary of the Navy, then soon-to-be President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in attendance. The builders intended to set a world record 10 months between the ship's keel laying and launch for what the New York Times declared would be the world's biggest and most powerful, both offensively and defensively, super dreadnought ever constructed. But the ship was only a little over complete the ship was only a little over half complete a year later. She was launched on June 19, 1915, making it about 15 months from keel laying to launch. In the meantime, the ship was named after the newest state in the Union by Secretary of the Navy Josephus Daniels. I think that's how you pronounce that. The New York Times estimated that 75,000 people attended the launch, including John Perroy Mitchell, who was the mayor of New York City, George W.P. Hunt, the governor of Arizona, and many high-ranking military officials. Several warships were also nearby, including many of the new dreadnoughts which had already entered service. Florida, Utah, Wyoming, Arkansas, New York, and Texas, some of which would be at Pearl Harbor. Esther Ross, the daughter of W.W. Ross of Prescott, Arizona, was given the honors of ship sponsor and christening. To acknowledge a ban on alcohol recently passed by the state legislature, also known as Prohibition, the state's governor decided 2 bottles would be used, one full of sparkling new life from Ohio and another filled with water from the Roosevelt Dam. After the launch, Arizona was towed to the Brooklyn Navy Yard for fitting out. Arizona was commissioned in the Navy on October 17, 1916, with Captain John McDonald in command. She departed New York City on November 10, 1916, after the crew had cleaned the ship and the propulsion system had been tested at the dock. After declinating the ship's magnetic compasses, or pretty much tuning them essentially, the ship sailed south for a shakedown cruise. Outside Guantanamo Bay, a stripped turbine on December the 7th forced the Navy to order Arizona back to New York for repairs. Although she was able to enter the Chesapeake Bay to test her main and secondary gun batteries on the 19th and 20th of December. The turbine could not be repaired inside the ship, so the yard workers had to cut holes in the upper decks to lift the damaged casing out. It was reinstalled after almost 4 months of repairs at the Naval Yard. Also, if this video will not be longer than 20 minutes, I may have to make this series in parts, such as I did with the New Jersey videos. So, let's continue. We're now into the World War I years. Arizona left the yard on April 3rd, 1917, after her turbine had been repaired, and 3 days later the United States declared war on Germany. Aside the battleship Division 8 operating out of the New York River, Arizona was employed only as a gunnery training ship for the crewmen on armed merchant vessels crossing the Atlantic in convoys. Shortly after the war began, 8 of her 5-inch guns, the 4 guns farthest forward and the sternmost 4 guns, were removed to equip merchant ships. When the ship sailed near the wreck of the old San Marcos, the wreck was sometimes used as a target for the 14-inch guns. And actually, when they say the San Marcos, that was the renamed version of the former USS Texas of 1892. So, if you guys would like a video on the Texas, also known as the San Marcos, please let me know in the comments down below. And the wreck, as I said, was used as a target for her 14-inch guns. Arizona rarely ventured in the ocean for fear of U-boats, and when she did, it was only in the company of other battleships and escort ships. 4 coal-fired American dreadnoughts, it was easier to obtain coal than oil in the United Kingdom, were eventually sent across the Atlantic in December of 1917 as Battleship Division 9, but Arizona was not among them. Life for Arizona's crew was not all training, as the raceboat team from Arizona was able to win the Battenberg Cup in July 1918 by beating the team from USS Nevada by 3 lengths over the 3-mile course. So it was not all Army life. There was some fun and games as well. The fighting ended on November 11, 1918 with an armistice. A week later, the ship left the United States for the United Kingdom, arriving on November 30th of 1918. After 2 weeks berthed at Portland Harbor in Dorset, Arizona sailed for France. On December 13th, 1918, Arizona joined 9 battleships and 28 destroyers, escorting President Woodrow Wilson on the ocean liner George Washington into Brest for 1 day on Wilson's journey to the Paris Peace Conference. The 10 battleships departed France the next day, taking less than 2 weeks to cross the Atlantic, and arrived in New York City on December 26th at parades, celebrations, and a full naval review by Secretary Daniels. In case any of you do not know what a naval review is, a naval review is actually an event where a gathering of ships from a particular navy is paraded and reviewed by a head of state or official civilian or military dignitary. And they just pretty much parade the fleet. Arizona was the first in line to render the 19-gun salute to Daniels. Along with many of the other members of the recently returned fleet, she was anchored off New York City for the next several weeks and opened to the public to tour. Arizona sailed from New York City for Hampton Roads on January 22nd, 1919. Also, side note here, pretty soon coming up, I'd probably say 4 or 5 videos from now, I will start my Hampton Roads series, which I'm announcing right now. It will be about the Civil War, and hopefully by the time I'll actually have my Ballet Hampton Roads model paint that I'm working on at the moment, so I can use that as a display for the video. So, let's continue. Arizona sailed from New York for Hampton Roads on January 22nd, 1919, and she continued south to Guantanamo Bay on February 4th and arrived 4 days later. This time in Caribbean waters was mostly used in training for battles and fleet maneuvering, although it did include a visit to the port of Spain. In April, Arizona's crew won the Battenberg Cup rowing competition again for the 2nd straight year before the ship was deployed to France, once again to escort President Wilson back to the United States. While the ship was awaiting Wilson's departure, she was redeployed to what is now Izmir in Turkey in response to tensions between Greece and Italy over the awarding of Smyrna, now Izmir, to Greece in the Paris Peace Treaty. The Greek and Italian governments had each deployed a major warship in the area, respectively the Georgios Averov and the Dulio, to enforce their interests. Shortly after Arizona arrived, Greek ground forces arrived in transports and were offloaded in the port. The resultant chaos in the city caused many American citizens in the area to seek shelter on board the Arizona. When the crisis abated, Arizona was ordered to Constantinople, which is now Istanbul, before she sailed for home on June 15th. She put into the New York Navy Yard on June 30th for an overhaul where 6 5-inch guns were removed and the fire control system was modernized. Work was completed in January of 1920 and the battleship sailed south to Guantanamo Bay for crew training. During this time, Arizona was fitted with a flying-off platform similar to the one given to Texas in March of 19. So, you can actually see one of them here with a plane, and another one was fitted back here on the aft deck. Arizona actually lost the Battenberg Cup in April to Nevada, and in June she was present for the Naval Academy's graduation ceremonies. In August, she became the flagship of Battle Division 7, although it was only later in 1920 that the battleship was refitted to be an admiral's flagship. In company with 6 battleships and 18 destroyers, Arizona was sent south again to transit the Panama Canal in January of 1921. After meeting up with the Pacific Fleet, Arizona continued on to Peru for a week before the two fleets combined to practice battle maneuvers. After a short return to the Atlantic, which included an overhaul in New York, Arizona, under the command of Jehu V. Chase, returned to Peru in the summer before she began operating from her new home port of San Pedro, California, part of Los Angeles, where she was based until 1940. For the rest of the 20s, Arizona's service consisted of routine training exercises. Naval historian Paul Stillwell remarked that the Pacific years included a great deal of sameness and repetition, and his chronology of the ship's movements is filled with phrases like torpedo defense practice, battle practice rehearsal, gunnery practice, en route to and anchored at. A recurring theme in these years were the annual fleet problems, which began in 1923, and simulated large fleet actions by having most of the active fleet face off against each other. The first two simulated an attack on the Panama Canal from the west, while in 1925 they attempted to defend the Hawaiian Islands. Other 1920s fleet problems included the Caribbean, near Central America, the West Indies, and Hawaii. On July 27, 1923, the ship, under command of John Y.R. Blakely, joined President Warren G. Harding's naval review in Seattle. Harding died just 1 week later, and Arizona joined the Pacific Fleet to fire a salute in his honor on August 3rd. Somehow, in early March of 1924, a stowaway, you can look this up yourself if you want, if you guys would like to, but I would like to keep this channel family friendly. So this stowaway did some very let's just say not so likable things in exchange for passage to San Pedro, until of course she was discovered on April 12th while the ship was anchored in Balboa, Panama. She was sent back to New York City, and Captain Percy Olmsted later convened court-martial for the 23 sailors that she had quote-unquote relations with, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, that's why I didn't go into detail. For 23 sailors once the ship began her refit in the Bremerton Navy Yard, which imposed sentences of up to 10 years imprisonment. It's not looked that fondly upon in the Navy when this happens. Admiral Henry A. Wiley, commander of the battle fleet, issued a letter of reprimand to all officers of the ship, including future Admiral and Chief of Naval Operations Arleigh Burke, who was then an ensign. Admiral William V. Pratt, then in command of the division to which Arizona was assigned, thought the penalties excessive, and he ordered the reprimands stricken from the officer's records when he became CNO, or Chief of Naval Operations, in 1930. Modernization. 4 months after Fleet Problem 9, in January of 1929, Arizona was modernized at Norfolk Navy Yard. The Norfolk Navy Yard is actually quite a famous Navy Yard. It is the same Navy Yard where the Merrimack was refitted into the CS Virginia, which I will talk about in Hampton Roads Part 3. Part 1 will be the Monitor, Part 2 the Merrimack/South Virginia, and then Part 3 would actually be the battle itself, to give you guys updates on that. New tripod masts, surmounted by 3-tiered fire control directors for the main and secondary armament, replaced the old hyperboloid cage masts. The number of 5-inch guns was reduced to 12, and the guns repositioned 1 deck higher, and 8 25 caliber 5-inch anti-aircraft guns replaced the 3-inch guns with which she had been originally equipped. These changes increased her crew to 92 officers and 1,639 enlisted men. The ship's main gun turrets were modified to increase the maximum elevation of their guns to 30 degrees. The compressed air catapult on the quarterdeck was replaced by one that used black powder. That, I do believe, would be the one down here. Unless I'm wrong, maybe it's the one up here. But since this is the turret roof, not the quarterdeck, I'm guessing this is the quarterdeck, so it would be the one down here. Her deck armor was increased by the addition of a 1.75-inch thickness of special treatment steel, and the ship was bulged to protect her from torpedoes. An additional bulkhead was added to the sides of the boiler rooms for the same purpose, and at the same stroke, her own outfit of 2 submerged torpedo tubes was removed during this refit, in light of my new appreciation that anticipated battleship engagement ranges made their future use improbable. This alteration also permitted the large transverse flat in which the tubes have been situated to be subdivided to reduce risks of flooding in action. Arizona's machinery was almost entirely replaced. Her high-pressure turbines were replaced by more powerful geared turbines from the canceled battleship Washington, and 6 new boilers replaced her originals. Their additional power offset the ship's increased displacement as demonstrated during her sea trials. Arizona made 20.7 knots, with 35,081 shp at a displacement of 37,654 long tons. So, I'm going to stop the video here, and then, of course, when part 2 comes out relatively soon, probably they'll be released around the same time anyway, most likely. And then when that happens, um, it'll probably either be 2 parts or even 3. Well, I'm guessing 2 for the moment. So probably relatively soon. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys in the next one. Bye.